Creativity is really the key skill in business too. Whether or not you have started ventures or work inside a large company, it's really what makes you valuable in the workplace. And applying creative approaches to how you manage your own career is really what the focus of my book is about.
Welcome to Tapping Creativity, a podcast for the creative community. Yes, it's a podcast for you. Whether you're looking for insight, inspiration, or community, you found yourself in the right place. My name is Matthew Temple. I am the host. And on this podcast, we go into questions, inspirations, challenges of the creative process. It's about connecting with other artists, hearing what other people are struggling with, their wins, their challenges. If you like what you hear, make sure you subscribe, follow, share. If you really like what you hear, give us a thumbs up or give us some kind of review. And with that, let's hop into this week's episode. Hey, welcome to this week's episode of Tapping Creativity. And this week I'm joined by a guest who is going to bring something different than what is commonly brought by our guests. Today, Omar Garriott is joining us. Omar is a tech entrepreneur for good, and we're going to talk about what that means to be a tech entrepreneur for good. One of the things that made me really excited about having Omar on the show is that he wrote this book, or he co-wrote this book, Conquer LinkedIn, Get Your Dream Job, Own Your Future. And I think this is particularly interesting and important because as an artist and as a creative, we've got different ways of sort of pursuing our dream job, exactly what that means. Once we've found it, it's not something that scales in the same way that other jobs do. And as many of you know, even the greatest artists of all time have had to find other jobs or some other ways of sometimes supplementing. That could be teaching. That could be, I think it was Philip Glass who was driving taxis and doing plumbing work while he was also at that point even a fairly accomplished composer. So this in our lives as creatives is something that I think is something worth really shining a spotlight on. And today, Omar is going to help us do that because not only is he a tech entrepreneur, but he is a coach helping people to find their dream jobs. He has also been a teacher as well, having taught through Teach America. So it brings us kind of really beautiful wealth of experience into this particular conversation today. So Omar, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me, and I hope I can live up to that lofty introduction. Matthew, I don't know if I get to enter the class of creatives with the fact that I've written a book now. I don't know if nonfiction counts, but I love those in the creative field.
Well, yes, it absolutely does. I mean, even as and we can talk about this a little bit too, because even as a tech entrepreneur, it takes some serious creative mental exercises and thinking and in being able to do the work that you do. And I think it's therefore 100% valid. And I think in some ways too, we do this thing where we separate these two things. There's creative work and then there's everything else. And when I'm actually working with people who are struggling in some way with their creative work, I said, well, one of the problems that we have is that we actually bifurcate those two things. Like, I need my creative time, and then I'm going to go do this other job, or I need my creative time, and I'm going to wash the dishes. And it's like, no, the creativity, the creative life that we live is not separate from our lives. It's fully intertwined. That's my take on it.
I love that. And I think, that's why I love the focus of your show. Creativity is really the key skill in business. Whether or not you have started ventures or work inside a large company, it's really what makes you valuable in the workplace. And, applying creative approaches to how you manage your own career is really what the focus of my book is about.
Give us just sort of a little, the elevator pitch about your book.
Sure. I see you have it there. So, you can just read the back cover out to everyone if you want. I'm just kidding. So LinkedIn has become synonymous with the job market, right? It's where hirers meet candidates. It is where the gig economy you mentioned is thriving. It is a modern day Rolodex. It's how networks are built. And it is really the key to finding or getting found for a great job, ideally your dream job, or a series of dream jobs, stacks of gigs that add up to something really meaningful for you. And so there's been this seismic change over the past 10, 20 years where everything has shifted to LinkedIn. This is where recruiters and hiring managers live all day long. They pay $10,000 a year to access a really special version of LinkedIn to find exactly the needles in the haystack that they want. And 97% of them across every industry and sector of our economy are using LinkedIn to find great candidates and to vet them. And 2/3 of recruiters are only using LinkedIn. So this is the seismic shift that's happened, is it's sort of gone beyond the stratosphere of a social network. I don't even think of it as a social network. I think of it as a professional network with a social layer that's part of it. But if you do not have an optimized, strong, unique, especially in the creative fields, professional brand and network that can go to bat for you when you really need it, before you actually need it, you just don't really exist in the world of work nowadays. So we wanted to write the book from that perspective of trying to demystify for people, what is this platform that has become so ubiquitous and critical really all about? How do you tap into it to unlock new potential for your own career? And it's born of our insider experience, having been inside the company. It's the only book written by former LinkedIn employees. My co-author and I started the student and new grad team when we were at LinkedIn several years ago. So that's what the book is about, and what inspired us to write it is just the knowledge gap that's out there of how critical this platform is, and then how to make the most of it to advance in your career. So
you talk a little bit in the book about, and I'm sorry, I'm forgetting the word, but it's sort of like like the second or third degree connections. And there's a way that you talk, like something like a weak connection or weak ties.
The weak ties, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So you talk about weak ties. Another reason sort of selfishly why I wanted to bring you on the show is that I have never applied for a job and gotten it. I have only gotten jobs basically through people who I've known or through connections, which also means that, my career has basically been limited to the people that I know. And coming out of COVID about, 3.5 years ago, I decided I was going to take a sabbatical and I moved to Kenya. My wife's Kenyan. She wanted to go back. I said, great. I left everything I had in LA. I sold everything, moved. And then, right, obviously we know kind of COVID happened. And about a few months ago, I thought, you know what, like, how do I even kind of look for what the next step is without this thing that I've always done, which is through connections? Talk a little bit about this idea of these connections, because right now it's like, it's still going to be maybe not necessarily who you know, but who you know who knows whom.
Exactly.
Right. And then how do you like using this to actually further that connection? Because really, probably the best jobs that we're ever going to get maybe are going to be because we have some type of connection. Right. Totally.
That will always be the case. So, the process you're describing of never successfully applying for a job, but only getting them through people you know, or people who know you or know what you're capable of, that continues to be the enduring way that most jobs are found, right? That's actually 70 to 80% of jobs is this hidden job market where people already know who they're going to hire before the job is really even, sourced out to lots of candidates. So the thing that's changed, though, is now we have these online platforms like LinkedIn that can make the process of building that network that can go to bat for you much more efficient. So that is really the key task for a job seeker or a gig seeker in today's economy, is to find somebody on the inside who can be that referral for you. And I just want to say something about referrals from current employees or people who know, your work, who are on the inside. They are like gold in this process of finding great work. They are referrals make up only 7% of job applicants, but 40% of who actually gets hired. So companies, even nonprofits that I work for, they pay these referral bonuses, not because they're in the business of throwing away money, but because they are the best source of talent. They stay the longest, they perform the best, they're most likely to get hired. And that's not going to change anytime soon. So the implication in terms of building our network is we got to have breadth in our network, okay? What you're talking about is sort of one way of doing it, which is still important, which is having a purposeful, selective network of people who are really close in, know what we're capable of, right? But breadth is equally important, if not more so important, in building your network, because that's where you get the power and really the volume of the weak ties. Weak ties meaning exactly what you said. It's not what we know, it's who we know. It's not even who we know directly, it's who they know. And that means when you're building more and more first degree connections, you're just expanding the pool of potential second and third degree connections who work at places that you might want to work, in jobs that you admire, and who will then be in your network by virtue of the fact that they're just 1 degree removed from people you both know, right? So, if you just think about, you have 500 connections on LinkedIn, being able to tap that 500 is going to be nowhere near the volume of the 500 that each of those 500 people know, right? And then the people that they know as well. So this has never been possible in the history of humankind, right? It's really only been since the advent of this platform 20 years ago and the internet that came with it that we can actually start to build a network that can help us see into lots of other networks. So the network that you talked about is, I would argue, is not a very healthy one. It's very selective. It's a cluster, probably in the field or the locations that you mentioned. And LinkedIn used to have this really cool product called InMaps. It was just a skunkworks product that they no longer do, but you could actually visualize your network. And your network would look like, 1 or 2 maybe really heavy clusters in certain areas. But the directive from everyone at LinkedIn was always build a really diverse, healthy network where you have lots of different clusters, right? And you have some small ones, some bigger ones. They would color code them and everything. And it really helped drive home the point that no matter what your future holds, you want to be able to have somebody not that far removed from you to help you get in the door. And you can play 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon, but this is a way for you to actually bring people in who can be helpful to you. So a lot of people have a little bit of an allergy, like the clients that I work with sometimes are a little bit allergic to, well, I don't really want to build a broad network. I'm not sure if I want to put myself out there. I don't know if that's that valuable. I have a high bar of, do I really know you? Can I vouch for you? And I would say LinkedIn is not like other social networks. It is public, well-lit. People are who they say they are. And connecting in broadly has really no downside. If people end up spamming you or selling you or worse, harassing you, you can always block them or report them or disconnect. But there's tremendous upside to having a broad network and not just a very small clustered, limited one. And most of that reason is because you can access lots more people that way. And those are lots more potential people who could refer you in and make sure you actually get a look, as opposed to the robots that will never get you to a human. You want actual humans on the inside to say, no, here's another human you should look at.
So I'm curious if you can talk a little bit about how you might see your insight relating to creatives. How do those of us in the creative fields use LinkedIn and some of your insight?
Yeah, a few things I would say. So first of all, I don't think it's all that different than the advice that I've been giving all day long on a national radio tour I'm doing today for job seekers of every stripe, industry, passion, age, career stage. So I'll just start with that disclaimer. Second thing is, what I say to job seekers in maybe the non-creative fields or more generally is, LinkedIn is the place, it is your professional brand in the world. There's nothing else that rivals it. It is the Google search result you want to come up at the top when people Google your name. And for that reason, you need to be carving out, especially true for creatives, you need to be carving out a unique professional brand and really burnishing that reputation you have around your creative work. I think we're in a day and age where, unfortunately, everybody who is in any kind of creative realm. And this is true even for people who are connected to big brands like, reporters and things. They have to have their own brand, right? That's just the way our world works now. And the place to burnish your brand and build it is LinkedIn. So I will just say that the other thing, and an important way in which you can use LinkedIn to do that is using it as sort of your online portfolio. If that's an appropriate thing in your field, you can attach rich media to your profile. You can feature it. You can connect it to specific job experiences that you've had. You can add volunteer experience if you've done a filmmaking project that's been more pro bono. There's a whole bunch of ways you can show, not just tell, on LinkedIn. It's even become a massive blogging platform where, and this is something I highly recommend, posting status updates and things like that doesn't matter. LinkedIn is not a social network. It is a professional network with a social layer. But when you write an original blog post of, here's the process I went through to make this film, or why everybody is a creative at heart, or whatever it is that you're passionate about, that will get attached to your profile and viewable to anybody who discovers you. Last thing I'll say is creating attaching your personal brand to a professional brand can also be advanced by making sure you have, if you're running your own business or endeavor in the creative space, having a company page that is yours and yours alone, and sort of tying the two things together, I think can be helpful. So you're sort of promoting your services at the same time as you're sort of saying, here's what I am about on my own profile.
Interesting. So a friend had written a book, nonfiction, very cool book, and he put it all over his LinkedIn and everything. Now, around the time when his book was published, it was during COVID. He lost his job. He was down. He lost his job, and as he was going through and then trying to find a new job, he wasn't getting hired, and he then hired a career coach who was like, get your book off of your LinkedIn, because the recruiters don't care about what you do on your free time, your sort of little passion project of writing your book. They want to know what the professional thing is. What is it? How is it going to serve their company? And is your writing going to be a distraction? So I'm curious what your insight is on that.
I could not disagree more. I don't know if he employed that strategy and it was fruitful for him, and I don't know what his book was about, but here's what I would say. I think that on your LinkedIn profile and presence, and even on your resume, you should give as many opportunities as possible for people to see who you really are and connect in with that person. I think that, creative work is super interesting, potentially connective for people. And why would you limit opportunities for people to make an authentic connection? When they're trying to hire somebody, competence is only one side of the story, right? A whole another side, in some cases more important, is, do I want to work with this person? Do I find them interesting? Do I think that they will be interesting and fun to be around? And I think that representing everything that you are now, using some discretion, I think is valuable. The other thing that you sort of touched on is, I got the chance to survey recruiters and hiring managers when I worked at LinkedIn, and 2/3 of them said they value volunteer experience on par with paid full-time work experience. They value it the same. And so when people are looking at your professional brand online, your LinkedIn profile, they are making quick judgments about, who you are, and you get a chance to tell your own story. That's what I love so much about LinkedIn. You can use that about section and the summary section to tie threads together of your interests and career, but you can also use that volunteer experience section to say, these are some of my passions in the world. And I would never tell people to cut any of that stuff short, because again, it's just opportunities for connective tissue. And that is so foundational to successfully finding a great job. It's all really about human connection. So I say, be who you are and be that person proudly.
That's really great to hear, because I think for a lot of creatives, we wear different hats. I mean, I've been working on a children's book for a little while, but of course, documentary filmmaking has been my most recent sort of endeavor in filmmaking. And then before that, I was vice president of production and development for an animation studio. Now, what is the relationship to all those things plus, my wife and I wrote a guided journal for couples. Those things are so crazy disparate, and yet at the same time, they also make up me. And I think a lot of people in the creative fields have that. It's like, wait, there are some people that basically I draw Mickey Mouse, 300 times a day for Disney, and that's
right.
That's cool. And then there are a lot of us who are like, I have a lot of different ways that I express my creative output, and what is the coherence in that to the outside world, whereas to me it kind of makes sense, but the outside world might say, wait, a C-level job basically for for an animation studio and a documentary filmmaker and a children's book author, like that's weird.
Yeah, I mean, while I do think it's important to represent all of that, because it will also, it's not just potential for connection and to draw the interest of people, it's also like it'll improve the fit, right? You don't want to be hiding parts of who you are at a job, right? You want that to be out there. The other thing, though, that you're touching on that I do think is important is creating that coherent story proactively. So not just expecting other people to connect those dots. That's the biggest mistake that I see job seekers or gig seekers make, is sort of throwing all these experiences on their profile or their resume and expecting people to make sense of them and draw order from them. And, what you described in your own career might feel disparate to you. It doesn't feel disparate to me, but it might feel disparate to somebody else. And, that is true for non-creatives too. Like all kinds of, people jump across industries and roles and so I think it's really incumbent on the professional in any field, really, but especially in the creative field, to connect those dots for people. And the place to do that is in your summary section. Well, it's called About at the top of your LinkedIn profile. But that's where you want to have a couple sentences tightly describing in narrative, fashion, storytelling, who you are, what you're most interested in. And in your case, Matthew, and any of your listeners, try to think about what is that connective thread? What are you really passionate about? There's soul searching involved there, but represent that in a compelling narrative. And then 3 bullets of the greatest hits of your career, what you're proudest of, the things that you put out in the world. And then if you're really targeting a specific type of job or gig next, you can have a paragraph after that in your About section that's just chock full of keywords for the job you want to be found for. Whether maybe it's an animator at Pixar, you want to view those job descriptions and see what keywords they're saying come up often in those kinds of job descriptions, the requirements they're looking for. And then you can just say expertise in or specialties in. And you're doing that so that you can game the search algorithm to make sure you rise up to the top of the search results. But I do think having a through line, that's a story that you can tell about what underlies those different types of projects is actually really important, and not something that you should expect other people to do.
Got it. That's super helpful. Thank you so much for that. So I'm thrilled now that our tie is hopefully a little less weak than it was before we met a half an hour ago. I'm actually making a bit of I don't want to say it's definitely not a left turn. In my About, it will make a whole lot of sense. In my summary, I am moving to Chicago to pursue a master's degree. And so when I get out from there, I hope I'll be looking and seeing how am I going to apply what I've really been working on in how it's going to be best of service in the world. So I will, hey, you might even see a knock on your LinkedIn door. But in the meantime, between that, I'm going to let you get on to your next one. I know you're on a tour, and I'm really just so happy you showed up to spend some time with me, with our audiences today. And I will say that linked, as you can see, I am not yet in the place where I have gone through it with a fine-tooth comb. I guarantee I will. I already dog-eared it up because I absolutely enjoyed kind of going through this. And one of the things that's always kind of got me about something like this is, wait, I need to get good at something that I'm going to use maybe for a very short period of time, but it's the dividends that is going to pay, I think, is what's so important, is that to get really good at finding a job where one hopes that one almost never, ever, ever has to use it again. But yet I also still need to master that. So I really appreciate the work that you and Jeremy put into this book. I think it's fantastic. It's great. It is out now, Workman Publishing, and highly recommended. And Omar, thanks again so much for joining us.
Thank you, Matthew. I really appreciate that. And yes, it's that moment in time when you're really looking for a job, but put some of these strategies in place and that great job will find you too.